I stood in the server room I had built from nothing 15 years of my life, humming around me in the gentle whir of 300 machines. Robert's words still echoed. "Pack up. My son just finished university and he's taking over. You'll handle paperwork." That morning he asked, "Ready to train, Adam?" I looked at his smug son, then back at Robert and said softly, "No, I'm done here." Adam's confident smirk vanished instantly. I walked past every server I had personally installed, never looking back. People think building an empire happens overnight. They see the finished product and imagine someone just snapped their fingers to make it appear. But I know the truth about what it takes to create something from absolutely nothing because I lived every single moment of that creation. I was barely 23 when I first walked into Robert's office in 2009. He had just inherited his father's struggling telecommunications company, and honestly, he looked as overwhelmed as I felt nervous. The server hub he desperately needed someone to manage consisted of 3 outdated desktop computers sitting in a converted storage closet in a strip mall in Miami. The air conditioning barely worked. The electrical setup was a fire hazard waiting to happen, and the whole operation generated maybe $30,000 a year in revenue. Robert was different then. Younger, humbler, genuinely grateful when I explained how we could transform his inherited mess into something that actually served the South Florida business community. He listened intently as I outlined my vision, a proper facility with redundant power systems, industrial-grade cooling, and security that would meet federal compliance standards. "How much would that cost?" he asked, his voice cautious but interested. I had done my homework. Initial investment of $200,000 for the facility and equipment. But within 3 years, we could be generating over $1 million annually. He took the risk. We found a perfect 10,000 square foot industrial space in Doral, and I threw myself into designing every aspect of the operation. I researched cooling systems for weeks, learning about airflow patterns and temperature management. I designed the power infrastructure myself, ensuring we had multiple backup generators and surge protection that could handle anything Florida weather threw at us. Those first months, I worked 16-hour days. I was there when the contractors installed the raised flooring. I supervised every inch of cable management, making sure our network architecture could scale as we grew. I programmed the biometric security systems personally, creating access protocols that would protect our clients' most sensitive data. The real challenge wasn't technical, though. It was building trust with potential clients. South Florida businesses had been burned by unreliable IT services before. Law firms losing client files, medical practices facing HIPAA violations, real estate companies watching property databases crash during peak season. My first major client was Dr. Patricia Wells, who ran a pediatric practice in Coral Gables. She was skeptical when I walked into her office, a young woman promising to solve problems that expensive consulting firms had failed to address. "I've heard promises before," she said, gesturing at filing cabinets full of patient records they were afraid to digitize. I spent 3 hours walking through her current system, identifying vulnerabilities, and explaining exactly how our redundant backup protocols would protect every single file. I showed her the disaster recovery procedures I had written from scratch, detailing step-by-step processes for maintaining data integrity even during major emergencies. 6 months later, Hurricane Irma tested every system I had designed. While other IT providers across South Florida failed their clients, losing days or weeks of data, our facility maintained perfect uptime. I slept at the facility for 3 days during the storm, monitoring generators and backup systems, making sure every client stayed connected. Dr. Wells called me the morning after the hurricane passed. "Lily, you saved my practice. Every patient record, every prescription, everything is exactly where it should be." Word spread quickly. Harrison and Associates, one of Miami's oldest law firms, moved their entire document management system to our facility. Sunshine Properties, managing over 5,000 rental units across 3 counties, trusted us with their complete database of tenant information and financial records. Each new client brought unique challenges that pushed me to innovate. I developed custom backup protocols that could handle the massive image files generated by architectural firms. I created specialized security measures for the defense contractors who needed federal compliance certification. I designed disaster recovery systems that could restore operations for financial advisors within minutes, not hours. By year 5, we were managing data for 300 businesses across South Florida. Our revenue had grown to $30 million annually. The facility ran with the precision of a Swiss watch, and I knew every component intimately. Robert changed gradually. Success made him confident, then entitled. He started taking credit for innovations I had developed, referring to his design achievements when speaking to potential clients. During industry conferences, he would describe solutions I had created as if they had been his ideas all along. The first time I heard him completely ignore my contributions, we were meeting with executives from Miami General Hospital. Robert explained our disaster recovery capabilities as something I developed based on my understanding of healthcare needs. I had spent months researching HIPAA requirements and medical data standards to create those protocols. After the meeting, I mentioned it to him privately. Robert, I designed those systems. It might be good to acknowledge the team's contributions. He looked genuinely surprised. Lily, you work for me. Everything developed here belongs to the company. That's how business works. I started noticing other changes. He hired a marketing director who began referring to Robert as the visionary behind Florida's premier data management solutions. Press releases described him as the innovative entrepreneur who revolutionized South Florida IT infrastructure. The real shift came when I overheard him talking to his brother during a family barbecue I had been invited to attend. This was year 12 of my tenure, and I thought we had developed something close to friendship beyond our professional relationship. The best part about building this business, Robert was saying, is knowing I can pass it down to Adam when he finishes college. 4 generations of family business, you know. Dad left me a foundation, and I'm leaving Adam an empire. I stood frozen by the kitchen window, holding a plate of food that suddenly felt heavy in my hands. 12 years of my life, my innovations, my relationship with every single client, and he was describing it as a family legacy he had built alone. That night, I started documenting everything. Every system I had designed, every client relationship I had developed, every innovation that had driven our success. I began organizing 15 years of evidence showing exactly who had built this empire. 3 years later, Adam graduated from college, and Robert's vision became reality. That's when he called me into his office with news that would change everything. Lily, you've done good work here, but it's time for fresh leadership. Adam has new ideas, modern approaches. You'll transition to administrative support. I looked at the man I had helped build into a successful businessman, remembering the nervous young inheritor who had once listened respectfully to my expertise. Administrative support, paperwork, scheduling, that sort of thing. Adam will handle all technical decisions moving forward. That conversation happened on a Friday afternoon. Over the weekend, I made copies of every document proving my contributions to the company. Monday morning, Robert asked if I was ready to train his son. I looked at Adam, fresh out of college, smiling with the confidence that comes from never having to prove yourself. Then, I looked at Robert, who genuinely believed his son could simply step into a role that had taken me 15 years to master. No, I said quietly. I'm done here. The foundation I had built was about to crumble, and I was going to let it happen. Adam arrived that Tuesday morning like he was walking onto a movie set where he was the star. He brought 3 of his college buddies with him, introducing them as his advisory team, while they wandered through the facility taking selfies and making TikTok videos about taking over the family business. I watched from my new desk in what used to be a supply closet relegated to sorting invoices and answering phones as Adam gave his friends a tour of the server room. He pointed at our primary networking hub and announced, "This is where all the computers connect to the internet." His friend Jake recorded him saying, "We're going to upgrade all this old stuff to the latest technology." The servers he was calling old stuff were enterprise-grade machines I had selected specifically for their reliability and processing power. The latest technology he wanted to install was consumer equipment he had seen featured in gaming videos online. By Wednesday, Adam was attempting to impress visiting clients with explanations of our services that made my stomach churn. When representatives from Coral Reef Medical Center came for their quarterly security review, Adam told them our cyber protection protocols were military grade because we use the same passwords as the Pentagon. I wanted to interrupt to explain that our actual security measures involved multi-factor authentication, encrypted data transmission, and biometric access controls that I had personally configured. But Robert had made it clear that any attempt to undermine Adam's authority would result in immediate termination. Thursday brought the first major crisis. I was filing contracts when the facility's monitoring system started flashing warnings. Temperature levels in server room B were climbing rapidly, indicating a cooling system malfunction that required immediate attention. I rushed to find Adam, who was in his new office playing video games on his laptop while his friends debated where to go for lunch. Adam, we have an emergency. The cooling system in Section B is failing, and we need to implement the backup protocols immediately. He barely looked up from his screen. Handle it yourself, that's what you're here for. I can't access the controls anymore. You changed all the administrative passwords, remember? Adam sighed dramatically and followed me to the server room, where I tried to walk him through the emergency procedures I had developed for exactly this situation. The backup cooling system required a specific sequence of commands to activate without causing system conflicts. This is too complicated, Adam said after 30 seconds of listening. Why can't we just turn on more air conditioning? I spent the next 20 minutes fixing the cooling system, while Adam told his friends about how quickly he had resolved a technical issue. When our client from Harrison and Associates called about temporary connectivity problems caused by the temperature spike, Adam assured them that he had personally diagnosed and corrected the server malfunction using advanced troubleshooting techniques. Friday revealed the depth of Adam's deception. While organizing his college transcripts for insurance purposes, I discovered that his degree was in business management with a minor in computer literacy, not computer science, as Robert had told everyone. His coursework included basic Microsoft Office training and an introductory class on social media marketing. The weekend gave me time to research Adam's actual qualifications. His senior project had been a presentation on how technology companies can maximize profits through customer engagement, not anything involving actual technical expertise. Monday brought new disasters. Adam had spent his weekend exploring the network architecture and managed to trigger a system-wide backup process during peak business hours. Every client experienced significantly slower response times, while the servers were occupied with unnecessary data replication. When Sunshine Properties called to complain about delays accessing their tenant databases, Adam explained that he was optimizing our systems for enhanced performance. He promised that his improvements would make everything 10 times faster by the end of the week. Tuesday, Adam decided to implement his first major change. He wanted to streamline our operations by eliminating what he called redundant backup systems. He didn't understand that these systems provided the redundancy that kept our clients' data safe during emergencies. I tried to explain why each backup system served a specific purpose, but Adam dismissed my concerns as resistance to innovation. He spent Wednesday attempting to disconnect backup servers while I watched helplessly from my desk, forbidden to intervene. Thursday, the inevitable happened. While trying to optimize our primary database server, Adam accidentally deleted critical configuration files that controlled how different client systems communicated with our network. 50 major accounts lost access to their data simultaneously. My phone rang constantly with panicked clients. Dr. Wells couldn't access patient records during her afternoon appointments. Harrison and Associates faced a crisis when lawyers couldn't retrieve case files needed for court hearings. Miami General Hospital's radiology department couldn't access imaging studies for emergency room patients. Adam's response was to blame me for inadequate documentation of the procedures. He told Robert that the disaster happened because I had deliberately created overly complex systems and failed to provide proper training. Robert accepted this explanation without question. He called me into his office and accused me of sabotaging the transition by not properly preparing Adam for his responsibilities. The clients are angry, and Adam says you didn't give him the information he needed to maintain the systems properly. I looked at Robert, wondering if he genuinely believed his son's lies or if he was choosing to believe them because accepting the truth would be too painful. Robert, I tried to train him. He's deleted configuration files that took months to develop. The backup procedures he's dismantling are what kept us running during Hurricane Irma. Adam has a college education in technology. He understands modern systems better than methods developed years ago. That night, I worked until 3 in the morning, restoring the deleted files from my personal backup drive systems I had created independently and maintained from my home office. By Friday morning, all client access was restored, but the damage to our reputation had been done. Adam took credit for resolving the crisis efficiently and used the incident to argue for updated protocols that prevent future complications. He had no idea that I had spent the night fixing his mistakes, and Robert didn't ask how the problems had been solved so quickly. Friday afternoon, Adam made his most dangerous decision yet. He gave building access codes to his college friends, allowing them to enter the facility whenever they wanted. Our federal contractor clients required strict security protocols, and unauthorized access was a violation that could result in criminal charges. When I pointed out the compliance issue, Adam accused me of being paranoid and resistant to team collaboration. He said his friends were technical consultants who would help him modernize our operations. That weekend, I realized Robert was going to let his son destroy everything I had built rather than admit he had made a mistake. The business that had taken 15 years to create was being demolished by ignorance and arrogance, and I was powerless to stop it. But I wasn't entirely powerless. I still had options Robert didn't know about, and I was about to use them. Monday morning brought the first major client defection, and it hit like a punch to the stomach, even though I had seen it coming. Dr. Patricia Wells. My very first client called Robert directly, instead of going through the usual support channels. I heard his end of the conversation from my converted supply closet office. I understand your concerns, Dr. Wells, but growing pains are normal during leadership transitions. Then his voice becoming more strained. 6 hours of downtime. That seems excessive. Finally. I see. Well, if you feel you need to explore other options, we certainly understand. After he hung up, Robert stormed into the main server room where Adam was showing his friend Tyler how to reorganize the cable management for better visual appeal. The cables Adam was rearranging carried network connections for our most critical systems. Adam, we just lost Coral Gables Pediatrics. They're saying we had a 6-hour outage yesterday that made their patient records inaccessible. Adam looked genuinely puzzled. I don't know anything about an outage. Everything looks fine to me. What Adam didn't realize was that his cable reorganization project had created intermittent connection losses that appeared as brief disconnections on client networks. Dr. Wells's electronic health record system had attempted to sync with our servers hundreds of times throughout Sunday, failing each time because of unstable network conditions Adam's improvements had created. Tuesday brought worse news. Margaret Harrison from Harrison & Associates called in a rage about their case management system malfunctioning during a major court hearing. Attorney Sarah Chen had been unable to access critical documents while presenting evidence to a federal judge, causing embarrassment for the firm and potentially compromising their client's case. This is unacceptable, Margaret told Robert during a heated phone call I could hear through the thin office walls. We trusted you with our most sensitive legal documents, and now we're facing potential malpractice issues because your systems failed during a federal court proceeding. Robert assured her the problems would be investigated and resolved, but I knew the truth. Adam had been experimenting with server optimization settings he had found in online forums, adjusting memory allocation and processing priorities without understanding their purpose. These changes were causing random system crashes that appeared as brief service interruptions to individual clients. While Robert dealt with angry phone calls, I made a decision that would change everything. I started secretly recording every interaction with Adam and Robert, documenting their decisions and the consequences. My phone captured Adam's casual dismissal of maintenance schedules, his authorization for unqualified friends to access restricted areas, and his blame shifting whenever problems arose. Wednesday brought the discovery that changed my perspective completely. While cleaning out old filing cabinets to make room for my new administrative duties, I found loan documents Robert had hidden from the company's financial records. He had borrowed $400,000 against the business assets to fund Adam's college expenses and a failed online gaming venture Adam had attempted during his junior year. The loan payments were due monthly, and the facility itself served as collateral. If revenue continued declining at the current rate, Robert would lose everything within 6 months. He wasn't just protecting Adam's ego by refusing to admit his son's incompetence. He was desperately hoping Adam could somehow salvage the business before the creditors foreclosed. That afternoon, Adam made his most reckless decision yet. He had been complaining about high electricity costs, noting that our backup generator systems consumed significant power, even during normal operations. Without consulting anyone or reviewing the emergency procedures, he decided to disconnect the backup power systems temporarily to reduce monthly utility bills. I discovered this when I arrived Thursday morning to find warning lights flashing throughout the facility. Our uninterruptible power supply systems designed to maintain operations during brief electrical interruptions had been completely disabled. Any power fluctuation would now cause immediate shutdowns of all server operations. Adam, you can't disconnect the backup power. Florida has electrical storms almost daily. If we lose power for even 30 seconds, every client will lose their connection simultaneously. Adam was sitting in his office eating breakfast and browsing social media. The electric bill was $800 last month. Dad said we need to cut costs. Besides, how often does the power actually go out? I tried to explain that power interruptions in South Florida were frequent and unpredictable, especially during summer storm season. Our backup systems weren't just for major emergencies. They maintained continuity during the brief power fluctuations that happened several times each week. You're being dramatic, Adam said, not looking up from his phone. If the power goes out, it comes back on. No big deal. Thursday afternoon, a typical Florida thunderstorm provided the dramatic proof I had dreaded. A lightning strike 2 blocks away caused a brief power fluctuation that would normally have been handled seamlessly by our backup systems. Instead, every server in the facility shut down simultaneously. 60 businesses lost access to their data instantly. Emergency calls flooded our phone lines from medical practices that couldn't access patient records, law firms locked out of case files, and real estate companies unable to process rental applications during their busiest season. I knew exactly how to restore the systems, but Robert had placed Adam in charge of all technical decisions. Adam stared at the rows of dark servers with genuine panic, having no idea how to bring them back online safely. Just turn them back on, he told the emergency repair crew he had called, instead of asking me for help. Sir, servers need to be restarted in a specific sequence to prevent data conflicts, explained the lead technician, a woman named Jennifer who specialized in emergency IT recovery. I don't care about the sequence, just get them running. I watched helplessly as Adam authorized random server restarts that created exactly the data conflicts Jennifer had warned about. Systems that should have been synchronized were starting up with different timestamps, causing database inconsistencies that would take days to resolve properly. By Friday morning, we had lost 6 more major clients. Miami General Hospital terminated their contract after their emergency department couldn't access patient imaging studies for 3 hours. Sunset Financial Advisors moved their client portfolio data to a competitor after losing access during peak trading hours cost their clients significant money. The local business journal ran a story titled, "Server Outages Plague Doral Data Management Company," featuring interviews with affected clients describing their frustrations with unreliable service and poor emergency response. Robert was increasingly desperate, calling emergency meetings with remaining clients and promising improvements he couldn't deliver. Adam seemed oblivious to the scale of the disaster, still making TikTok videos about managing a tech empire and dealing with difficult employees who resist modernization. Friday afternoon brought the moment I realized they planned to make me the scapegoat for everything. Robert called me into his office with a prepared document outlining performance issues and failure to adequately train management personnel. "Lily, We're receiving complaints that you haven't properly documented our procedures, leading to technical difficulties during the leadership transition. I looked at the formal reprimand he wanted me to sign, acknowledging responsibility for inadequate knowledge transfer and resistance to updated operational methods. Signing this document would legally establish me as the cause of every problem Adam's incompetence had created. Robert, you're asking me to take responsibility for problems I warned you about and tried to prevent. You've worked here for 15 years. If the systems are too complicated for new management to understand, that indicates poor design and inadequate documentation. That afternoon, I made copies of every recording I had made, every email documenting Adam's mistakes, and every piece of evidence showing the real cause of our company's collapse. If Robert wanted to blame me for the disaster, he would have to explain why all the problems began exactly when Adam took control and why they occurred despite my attempts to provide training and guidance. I also did something else. I called my attorney. The second week of July brought weather that matched the chaos inside our facility. Hurricane season had arrived early, with daily thunderstorms that tested every weakness in our now vulnerable infrastructure. Without backup power systems, each storm became a potential disaster for our remaining clients. Monday morning, I arrived to find the facility in crisis. Over the weekend, a series of power fluctuations during Saturday's storms had triggered multiple server shutdowns. Adam wasn't there. He had gone to Orlando with his friends for a music festival, leaving explicit instructions that no one should attempt to restart any systems without his permission. Margaret Harrison called at 8 a.m, her voice shaking with rage. Lily, we have a federal court hearing at 10 o'clock and we cannot access any of our case files. 30 years of legal work is sitting on your servers and we can't reach anything. I explained that Adam had forbidden anyone from touching the systems during his absence, but Margaret interrupted me. I don't care about company politics. We have federal judges waiting for documents that aren't accessible because your boss's son wants to play games with our business. Dr. Wells called 20 minutes later. Lily, my Monday morning appointments are backing up because I can't access patient histories, medication lists, or appointment schedules. Parents are sitting in my waiting room with sick children, and I'm operating blind because everything is stored on servers that won't start up. By 10 o'clock, I had received 43 calls from frantic clients. I tried reaching Adam repeatedly, but his phone went directly to voicemail. His social media showed him posting videos from the music festival, clearly too busy having fun to handle business emergencies. Robert arrived at 11, looking haggard and overwhelmed. What's happening here? I've got clients calling me directly demanding explanations for system failures. I explained the power issues and Adam's instructions not to restart any servers without his approval. Robert stared at the rows of dark machines that represented millions of dollars in client data, sitting inaccessible because his son was partying in Orlando. Can't you just turn them on? You've done it before. Robert, I don't have administrative access anymore. Adam changed all the passwords and made it clear that I'm not authorized to make technical decisions. For the first time since Adam's takeover began, Robert seemed to grasp the magnitude of what was happening. He authorized me to restart the critical systems, but the damage was already done. Several clients had spent hours unable to operate their businesses during their busiest day of the week. Tuesday brought a different kind of crisis. Federal auditors from the Department of Defense arrived for a surprise compliance inspection of our government contractor accounts. These inspections happened periodically to ensure that companies handling classified information maintained proper security protocols. Adam had returned from Orlando, but was clearly unprepared for serious questions about our security procedures. The lead auditor, a stern woman named Commander Stevens, asked to review our access control logs and personnel background check records. Mr. Brennan, we need to see documentation showing who has accessed classified storage areas over the past 30 days. Adam fumbled through files he clearly didn't understand, while I watched from my desk, knowing exactly where the required documentation was stored. Our biometric access logs were maintained automatically, but Adam didn't know how to retrieve them from the security system. The files are somewhere in the computer system. My assistant can probably find them. Commander Stevens looked at me questioningly, and I explained that I was no longer authorized to access the security systems under the new management structure. Sir, federal regulations require that authorized personnel maintain constant access to security records. If your facility cannot produce access logs immediately, we'll need to suspend your contractor certification pending a full security review. Adam's face went pale. Losing our federal contractor status would mean losing several major accounts that represented nearly 20% of our remaining revenue. I could have retrieved the access logs in under 5 minutes, but doing so would require overriding Adam's authority, which Robert had explicitly forbidden. Instead, I watched as Adam spent 2 hours trying to navigate security software he didn't understand, while federal auditors grew increasingly impatient. Wednesday brought the revelation that Adam's college friends had been sharing building access codes with other people. Tyler had given the codes to his girlfriend, who had passed them along to her roommate, who worked for a competing IT company. I discovered this when reviewing security camera footage for the federal audit. Multiple unauthorized individuals had entered our facility over the past 2 weeks, including someone who had photographed our server configurations and client equipment labels. When I reported this to Robert, he initially refused to believe it. Adam wouldn't compromise our security. His friends are trustworthy college graduates. I showed him the security footage of strangers walking through our server rooms with cameras taking pictures of equipment that contained confidential client information. Some of the unauthorized visitors had accessed areas containing federal contractor data, creating potential criminal liability for espionage violations. Robert, we need to report this to the federal auditors immediately. If they discover unauthorized access during their investigation, and we haven't disclosed it, the consequences will be much worse. But Adam convinced his father that reporting the security breach would create unnecessary complications, and that his friends could be trusted to keep any information they had seen confidential. Thursday brought multiple system failures caused by Adam's latest attempt at infrastructure improvements. He had been reading online articles about cloud optimization and decided to modify our server configurations to implement what he called advanced efficiency protocols. These modifications involved changing fundamental network settings that controlled how our servers communicated with client systems. Adam had no understanding of what these settings actually controlled, but he was convinced that adjusting them would improve performance. Instead, his changes created network conflicts that caused random disconnections for different clients at different times. The problems appeared and disappeared unpredictably, making them nearly impossible for clients to document or for us to reproduce consistently. Coral Reef Medical Center called to report that their imaging system was randomly losing connection to our storage servers, causing radiologists to lose work in the middle of diagnostic sessions. Sunset Financial was experiencing intermittent failures that prevented real-time stock trading during market hours. I knew how to reverse Adam's changes and restore stable operations, but doing so would require accessing the same systems he had been modifying. Robert continued insisting that only Adam could make technical decisions even as client complaints mounted. Friday brought the crisis I had been dreading. During the morning's thunderstorm, multiple power fluctuations overwhelmed our compromised infrastructure. Without proper backup systems, servers began shutting down randomly as electrical conditions fluctuated. The cooling systems, already strained by Adam's modifications, couldn't handle the sudden temperature changes that occurred when servers shut down and restarted unpredictably. Internal temperatures spiked beyond safe levels, threatening permanent hardware damage. I found Adam in his office staring at monitoring displays showing critical temperature warnings throughout the facility. He looked genuinely terrified as he watched 15 years of my work approaching destruction. Lily, what do I do? Everything's showing red warnings, and I don't know what any of it means. For just a moment, I felt sympathy for him. He was finally facing the reality of what he had taken on the complexity of systems he had dismissed as simple computer stuff that anyone could manage. But then he said something that erased any empathy I might have felt. If this equipment gets damaged, Dad's going to blame me. Can you fix it quietly so he doesn't find out how bad things got? He wasn't concerned about our clients losing their data. He wasn't worried about the businesses that depended on our systems. He was afraid of getting in trouble with his father for destroying something he didn't understand. Adam, fixing this will require shutting down all client operations for at least 6 hours, while I reconfigure the cooling systems and restart everything in the proper sequence. Every client will know exactly how serious this crisis has become. I don't care what you have to do. Just make sure Dad doesn't think it's my fault. That afternoon, while I worked desperately to prevent permanent data loss, Adam spent his time calling clients to preemptively blame the crisis on legacy infrastructure issues and complications from outdated equipment that hadn't been properly maintained. By the time I had restored safe operating conditions, Adam had convinced half our remaining clients that the near disaster was caused by my poor system design and inadequate maintenance procedures. That evening, Robert called me into his office with the federal auditor's preliminary report. Commander Stevens had found multiple security violations, including unauthorized access by unvetted individuals and failure to maintain proper documentation of classified information handling. Lily, they're recommending suspension of our federal contractor status because of security breaches they say happened under your supervision. I realized then that Adam had told the auditors that I was still responsible for security procedures despite having been stripped of all administrative access. He was positioning me as the scapegoat for every violation his decisions had created. Robert, I warned you about the security risks. I documented every concern. I have recordings of Adam dismissing these issues and authorizing the access that caused the violations. Recordings. You've been secretly recording conversations in my company. That's when I knew there was no path back. Robert was going to let his son destroy everything I had built, blame me for the consequences, and probably pursue legal action to prevent me from exposing the truth. But I had been preparing for this moment longer than they realized, and I had resources they didn't know about. Saturday morning, I sat in my attorney's office with 15 years of documentation spread across Sarah Martinez's conference table. Sarah specialized in employment law and whistleblower protection, and she had been reviewing my case since I first contacted her 2 weeks earlier. Lily, what you've documented here goes far beyond wrongful termination. We're looking at potential federal crimes breach of fiduciary duty and deliberate destruction of client relationships for personal gain. The recordings I had made told a devastating story. Adam admitting he had no technical knowledge while making decisions that affected critical infrastructure. Robert acknowledging privately that he was promoting Adam despite his incompetence because blood is thicker than water. Both of them discussing plans to blame me for problems they knew I had tried to prevent. But Sarah's most important discovery involved the federal contractor violations. According to your documentation, both Robert and Adam knew that unauthorized individuals had accessed classified information areas, and they chose not to report it to federal authorities. That's not just a civil matter. That's criminal conspiracy to conceal security breaches involving national defense information. Sunday, I made a decision that would change everything. I called each of our major clients personally, not to solicit their business, but to inform them about the true scope of the problems affecting their data security. Dr. Wells was my first call. Patricia, I need you to know that the security breach affecting federal contractor data also compromised other client information stored in adjacent systems. You should have your IT security consultant review what data might have been exposed. Margaret Harrison was next. Margaret, the intermittent access problems you've been experiencing aren't random system failures. They're caused by configuration changes made without understanding their impact on database integrity. You should have your legal documents forensically reviewed to ensure no corruption has occurred. I wasn't trying to steal clients or damage the company's reputation. I was fulfilling my ethical obligation to warn people about risks to their data that they didn't know existed. Monday morning, Robert arrived to find his phone ringing constantly, with calls from clients demanding explanations about security breaches and data integrity issues they hadn't been informed about. He burst into my office, his face red with anger. What did you tell them? Half our remaining clients are talking about pulling their contracts and demanding forensic audits of their data. I told them the truth about risks to their information security, risks that you and Adam created and then tried to hide. You can't contact our clients directly. That's industrial sabotage. Robert, I have an ethical obligation to warn people when their data security has been compromised. Staying silent would make me complicit in covering up federal security violations. That afternoon, Commander Stevens returned with a full federal investigation team. Someone had reported the unauthorized access to classified contractor data, and the Department of Defense was treating it as a potential espionage case. Mr. Brennan, we've received allegations that your facility has experienced significant security breaches involving classified information, and that your company failed to report these incidents as required by federal law. Robert tried to minimize the situation, describing the unauthorized access as minor protocol variations and misunderstandings about visitor procedures. But the investigators had photographs of non-cleared individuals in classified areas taken from our own security cameras. Adam made everything worse by trying to lie about his authorization of the access. Those people had permission to be here. They were technical consultants helping with system upgrades. Mr. Brennan, do you have security clearance documentation for these consultants? Background check records, signed confidentiality agreements. Of course, Adam had none of these things. His friends were college students with no clearances, no technical training, and no legal authority to access any classified information. Tuesday brought the revelation that transformed my legal position completely. While reviewing financial documents for the investigation, federal auditors discovered Robert's hidden loans and the true financial condition of the company. Ms. Connor, did you know that Brennan Technologies has been operating while technically insolvent for the past 8 months? I had suspected financial problems, but hadn't realized how severe they were. Robert had been hiding the company's bankruptcy to maintain our federal contractor certifications, which required demonstrated financial stability. The assets securing Mr. Brennan's personal loans include all company equipment, the facility lease, and client data storage systems. If the loans default, the lenders could seize hardware containing classified federal information. This meant that Robert's financial recklessness had created a national security risk. Foreign-owned banks could potentially gain possession of servers containing Defense Department contractor data. Wednesday, I met with federal investigators to provide my complete documentation of the security violations and cover-up attempts. The evidence I had gathered painted a clear picture of deliberate negligence and criminal disregard for national security protocols. Ms. Connor, your cooperation in this matter has been invaluable. However, we need to understand your legal liability as the former security administrator for this facility. Sarah Martinez accompanied me to this meeting, and she had prepared a comprehensive defense. My client attempted repeatedly to prevent these violations. She documented her warnings, recorded conversations where her concerns were dismissed, and was ultimately stripped of all authority to maintain security protocols. The investigators reviewed my recordings of Adam authorizing unauthorized access, my emails, warning about security risks, and my attempts to maintain proper procedures despite being excluded from technical decisions. Ms. Connor, based on this evidence, you appear to have been deliberately excluded from security decisions specifically to prevent you from maintaining proper protocols. We don't see any criminal liability for your actions. Thursday brought the phone call I had been expecting. Robert, desperate and facing federal charges, offered me complete control of the company in exchange for my help resolving the investigation. Lily, you know these systems better than anyone. Help me clean up this mess and I'll make you a full partner. 50% ownership, your name on everything, complete authority over all technical decisions. What about Adam? Adam will learn different aspects of the business. Administrative functions, maybe sales support. You'll have final say over all technical operations. I considered his offer for exactly 30 seconds before declining. Robert, the company, is financially insolvent, facing federal criminal charges, and has lost 70% of its client base. You're offering me half ownership of a business that's going to be bankrupt within 60 days. Friday brought the news that changed everything. Miami Business Journal ran a front-page story about the federal investigation identifying me as the whistleblower, whose cooperation had exposed the security violations. The article described my 15-year history, building the company's technical infrastructure, and my attempts to prevent the problems that had led to federal charges. It portrayed me as a dedicated professional who had sacrificed her career to protect national security. That afternoon, my phone started ringing with calls from former clients who had read the article. Dr. Wells called first. Lily, I had no idea what was really happening over there. If you're starting your own practice, Coral Gables Pediatrics wants to be your first client. Margaret Harrison called an hour later. Lily Harrison and Associates has decided to terminate our contract with Brennan Technologies immediately. We'd like to discuss having you manage our IT infrastructure independently. By the end of the day, 12 former clients had called expressing interest in working with me directly, and 3 potential new clients had contacted me based on the newspaper coverage. Saturday morning, I incorporated Lily's logic systems and began the process of building something new from the ashes of Robert's empire. The federal courthouse in downtown Miami felt imposing as I walked up the stone steps that Tuesday morning in October. 3 months had passed since the investigation began, and today would determine the legal consequences for Robert and Adam's decisions. Sarah Martinez walked beside me, carrying files documenting the complete timeline of events that had led to federal charges. As the key witness in the case, I would testify about the security violations, the cover-up attempts, and the systematic dismantling of procedures I had developed to protect classified information. Remember, Lily, just answer the questions directly and refer to your documentation when asked for specific details, Sarah reminded me as we entered the courtroom. Robert sat at the defendant's table with his attorney, looking older and more worn than I had ever seen him. The confident businessman who had once dismissed my concerns as paranoia now faced potential federal prison time for conspiracy to conceal security breaches involving national defense information. Adam sat beside his father, fidgeting nervously and avoiding eye contact with everyone in the room. His college friends, the technical consultants, who had photographed classified contractor data, had already accepted plea agreements in exchange for their testimony about how they gained unauthorized access to the facility. The prosecutor assistant U.S. Attorney Rebecca Chen presented a thorough case demonstrating that Robert and Adam had known about the security violations and deliberately chosen not to report them to federal authorities. My recordings of their conversations provided clear evidence of their decision to prioritize protecting Adam's reputation over national security obligations. When called to testify, I described the systematic breakdown of security protocols under Adam's management and Robert's support for his son, despite knowing about the violations. Ms. Connor, in your professional opinion, did Mr. Robert Brennan and Mr. Adam Brennan understand the federal reporting requirements for security incidents involving classified contractor data? Yes, they did. I explained the requirements multiple times, provided written documentation of the violations, and specifically warned them about the legal consequences of not reporting unauthorized access to classified areas. How did they respond to your warnings? Robert told me that reporting the violations would create unnecessary complications for Adam's transition into management. Adam said his friends could be trusted to keep quiet about what they had seen. The defense attorney tried to argue that Adam's actions were the result of inexperience rather than criminal intent. But my documentation showed repeated warnings and explicit explanations of the legal requirements they were choosing to ignore. After 2 days of testimony, the federal judge delivered sentences that reflected the seriousness of the violations. Robert received 18 months in federal prison, suspended to 6 months, with 2 years of probation in exchange for his cooperation and agreement to restructure the business under court supervision. Adam received probation and community service, but was permanently barred from working with federal contractors or accessing any classified information systems. His dreams of inheriting a technology empire were over before they had really begun. But the criminal case was only part of the justice I witnessed that fall. The civil consequences proved even more devastating for Robert's business ambitions. The Defense Department terminated all federal contractor agreements, eliminating nearly 30% of Brennan Technologies' revenue. The negative publicity from the federal case drove away most remaining clients who couldn't risk association with a company that had mishandled classified information. By November, Robert was forced to sell the facility and most company assets to pay his legal fees and satisfy the loans he had hidden from company records. The bankruptcy auction was scheduled for a Tuesday morning, and I arrived early with my attorney and a certified check. Lot number 15 industrial facility at 700 Coral Way, Doral, including all installed infrastructure cooling systems, backup power equipment, and networking hardware. I had spent the previous month securing financing for this moment. 12 of my former clients had provided letters of intent, guaranteeing their business to Lily's logic systems, and those commitments had enabled me to obtain loans backed by projected revenue rather than existing assets. The bidding was light. Most potential buyers were deterred by the facilities association with the federal security scandal and the complexity of the technical infrastructure. I acquired the 10,000 square foot facility I had designed for 1/10 of its original value. December brought the satisfaction of rebuilding with proper foundations. My first hire was Jennifer Peterson, the emergency repair technician who had tried to warn Adam about proper server restart procedures during our power outage crisis. She became my director of operations responsible for maintaining the high standards I had always demanded. Lily, it's refreshing to work somewhere that values technical competence over family connections, Jennifer told me during her first week. I've seen too many businesses destroyed by nepotism and ego. Dr. Wells's pediatric practice became my first official client, followed quickly by Harrison and Associates and 8 other former Brennan Technologies accounts. Each client received detailed security assessments, updated disaster recovery procedures, and transparent communication about any issues that affected their data. The difference in service quality is remarkable, Dr. Wells commented during our quarterly review meeting. You actually answer questions about technical procedures instead of making excuses for problems you created. By January, Lily's Logic Systems was serving 60 clients across South Florida, with satellite offices planned for Tampa and Jacksonville. The business model I implemented emphasized competence over connections with advancement, based on technical skills and client satisfaction, rather than family relationships or personal loyalty. The industry recognition came in March, when Florida Technology Magazine featured my story in their annual Innovation Leaders edition. The article described my transformation of a failed business into a successful enterprise built on ethical principles and technical excellence. Connor's approach demonstrates that sustainable success in technology services requires genuine expertise, not just marketing and connections. The article concluded. Her commitment to transparency and competence has established new standards for IT infrastructure management in South Florida. April brought the most satisfying moment of all. Robert, now working as a junior technician at a competing IT company, attended an industry conference where I was speaking about data security best practices. During the networking reception afterward, he approached me quietly. Lily, I owe you an apology. I let family loyalty cloud my judgment, and I nearly destroyed everything you had built. Watching you succeed independently has taught me more about real leadership than I learned in 20 years of running a business. I looked at the man who had once dismissed my warnings and promoted incompetence over expertise. He seemed genuinely humbled by the consequences of his decisions. Robert, everyone deserves a chance to learn from their mistakes. Focus on developing real skills instead of relying on inherited authority. There's room in this industry for people who earn their positions through competence. Would you consider giving me a reference for the senior technician position at my current company? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm trying to build a career based on what I actually know, rather than what my name used to mean. I agreed to provide a reference based on his work performance since the bankruptcy, emphasizing his willingness to learn and his newfound respect for technical expertise. 6 months later, he was promoted to project manager, earning the advancement through demonstrated competence rather than family connections. Adam's path was different. He left Florida after the trial, moving to Seattle, where he found work in retail management. His social media posts showed a young man struggling to build an identity separate from his family's former business success. I felt no satisfaction in his failure, only hope that he would eventually learn the value of earning respect through effort rather than expecting it through inheritance. By summer, my business had grown to employ 23 people, all hired, based on their technical qualifications and commitment to client service. The company culture emphasized continuous learning, ethical behavior, and mutual respect, regardless of educational background or family connections. What I love about working here, said Maria Santos, our newest network security specialist, is knowing that my advancement depends on my skills and dedication, not on who I know or where I went to school. The foundation I had rebuilt was stronger than the original, built on principles that would survive leadership transitions and resist the corruption of nepotism or arrogance. Standing in my expanded facility on a bright morning in February, exactly 2 years after I had walked out of Robert's office for the last time, I watched my team of 35 technicians and specialists work with the kind of focused dedication that comes from knowing your expertise is valued and your contributions are recognized. The transformation had been remarkable. Lily's Logic Systems now served over 400 clients across Florida, with offices in Miami, Tampa, and Jacksonville. Our reputation for technical excellence and ethical business practices had attracted clients from as far away as Atlanta and Charlotte, businesses seeking IT infrastructure management they could trust completely. The recognition wall in our lobby told the story of what competence and character could achieve. The Florida Technology Leader Award sat beside certificates from the Better Business Bureau, commendations from federal agencies for our security protocols, and thank you letters from clients whose businesses we had helped save during emergencies. But the most meaningful recognition came from the people who worked alongside me every day. Jennifer Peterson, now my Vice President of Operations, had helped establish training programs that developed technical expertise while emphasizing ethical responsibility. Maria Santos had become our Director of Cybersecurity, building protection systems that set new standards for the industry. Lily, the quarterly client satisfaction surveys came back with 98% excellent ratings. Jennifer reported during our Monday morning leadership meeting. The comments consistently mentioned trust, competence, and transparency as the reasons they choose to stay with us. Our success had created opportunities to give back to the industry that had shaped my career. I served on advisory boards for 3 Florida universities, helping design computer science curricula that emphasized practical skills alongside theoretical knowledge. We offered internships to promising students regardless of their family backgrounds or social connections, focusing exclusively on their potential and dedication. The mentoring program I had established paired experienced technicians with newcomers to the field, ensuring that knowledge transferred effectively while maintaining our standards for excellence. Every intern learned that advancement depended on mastery of skills and commitment to client service, not on personal relationships or political maneuvering. The best part about this program, explained David Kim, one of our senior network administrators, is watching young people discover they can build careers based on what they know and how well they perform, not who their parents know. This philosophy had attracted talented individuals from diverse backgrounds who might have been overlooked by companies that prioritized connections over competence. Our team included former military technicians, community college graduates, and career changers who brought practical experience and fresh perspectives to complex challenges. The client relationships we built were based on mutual respect and genuine expertise. When Coral Reef Medical Center faced a ransomware attack in January, our rapid response and secure recovery procedures prevented any patient data loss and restored operations within hours. The hospital's CEO publicly credited our preparation and competence with saving their ability to serve the community during the crisis. Working with Lily's Logic Systems feels like having an extension of our own team, commented Dr. Patricia Wells during a medical industry conference where I had been invited to speak about IT security and healthcare. They understand our needs, anticipate our challenges, and provide solutions that actually work, rather than just sounding impressive. The justice that mattered most wasn't legal or financial but professional. Every successful project, every satisfied client, and every team member who advanced based on merit rather than connections proved that competence ultimately triumphs over arrogance and entitlement. Robert's journey illustrated this principle perfectly. After 18 months working as a junior technician, he had earned promotion to project manager through demonstrated skills and genuine leadership. His transformation from an entitled business owner to a respected team member showed that people could change when they learned to value expertise over inherited authority. I spent 20 years taking credit for work I didn't understand. Robert told me during a chance encounter at an industry trade show. Now I spend my time learning from people who know more than I do, and it's the most rewarding work I've ever done. Adam's absence from the Florida technology industry was itself a form of justice. The damage he had caused through incompetence and arrogance had been contained, preventing him from destroying other businesses or endangering additional client data. His banishment from federal contractor work ensured that national security information remained in competent hands. The ripple effects of our success extended beyond our immediate business. Other IT companies in South Florida began adopting more rigorous hiring practices emphasizing technical qualifications over personal connections. Industry associations started offering professional development programs focused on ethical business practices and client service excellence. The Lily Connor approach has changed how we think about leadership in technology services, noted the president of the South Florida IT Professionals Association during their annual awards ceremony. She's demonstrated that sustainable success requires genuine expertise, ethical behavior, and respect for the people who do the actual work. Our financial success enabled expansion into cybersecurity consulting, helping small and medium-sized businesses develop protection against increasingly sophisticated threats. The knowledge I had gained during our federal investigation proved invaluable for understanding regulatory requirements and security protocols that many companies struggle to implement effectively. The teaching opportunities I accepted at Florida International University allowed me to share practical insights with the next generation of technology professionals. My courses emphasized real-world problem-solving, ethical decision-making, and the importance of continuous learning in a rapidly evolving field. Professor Connor doesn't just teach us about technology, observed one of my graduate students. She teaches us about building careers based on competence and character, not just technical skills. Looking toward the future, I saw opportunities to continue growing while maintaining the principles that had guided our success. Plans for expansion into North Carolina and Georgia were moving forward with local partnerships that emphasized our commitment to competence-based advancement and ethical business practices. The legacy I wanted to build wasn't just a successful company, but a demonstration that merit-based organizations could thrive in competitive markets while maintaining high ethical standards. Every person we hired, every client we served, and every project we completed successfully contributed to proving that competence and character were more valuable than connections and arrogance. As I prepared to address our quarterly all-hands meeting, I reflected on the journey that had brought us to this point. The betrayal and injustice that had ended my previous career had become the foundation for something better, stronger, and more sustainable than what I had lost. 2 years ago, some of you were working for companies that valued family connections over professional expertise. I told the assembled team, "Today you're part of an organization that advances people based on their skills, their dedication, and their commitment to serving our clients with integrity." The applause that followed wasn't just appreciation for our success, but recognition that we had built something worth preserving and expanding. We had created an environment where competence was rewarded, character was valued, and every person's contributions were acknowledged and respected. Have you ever worked in an environment where family connections mattered more than professional competence? How did you handle situations where qualified people were passed over for advancement in favor of less capable individuals with better connections? I'd love to hear your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe for more true stories about workplace justice and professional triumph. Share this with anyone who's ever felt undervalued at work despite their expertise and dedication. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your skills and character will always be more valuable than anyone's connections or inherited authority. Keep building your expertise, maintain your integrity, and never let anyone convince you that competence doesn't matter.